Charis, and welcome back to the channel, guys. This is my review of episode 2 of House of the Dragon. This one is called The Rogue Prince. You could probably see where this is going. I've just got back from Bermuda, so thank you for staying tuned. I haven't actually, I wish. But anyway, straight off the bat, my personal thoughts and feelings on this episode are that it was good. I don't think it was as strong as the first episode in the series, and I'll break down as to why. Goes without saying, guys, this is going to contain huge spoilers for the episode, so if you haven't seen episode 2 yet, or even episode 1, come back here at a later time. And if you do like this content, please remember to leave a thumbs up and consider subscribing as well if you are brand new to the channel and a strong supporter of Game of Thrones and anything House of Dragon related. So, the way that these reviews are going to work are they're going to be weekly episodic reviews. I was going to wait until the end of the season, do a review of each episode and then an overall rating, but I just think that's a bit tedious, and as they are released weekly and not all together, it makes sense to do it that way anyway. So episode 2, The Rogue Prince, we get a very gruesome opening scene. There's lots of soldiers strewn out on the beach and they're being eaten alive by crabs. Crabs are having a good go and going inside the skull and all that kind of stuff. It's quite gruesome. But we literally get a panning shot of the beach and there's a bit of a disaster going on. It then goes back to the King's Guard and they talk about an issue with a certain pirate or foreign invader known by the name of the Crab Feeder. So this then prompts the King Viserys and his little crew to basically come up with a tourney. And in that tourney, they're looking to replace the King's Guard. So Rhaenyra suggests that they should be using dragon riders to take down Daemon. That's the main thing. We shouldn't be here talking about the King's Guard. Daemon's now firmly in Dragonstone. He's got his foothold in the place and he's sort of running the roost. He's gone in there unchecked, unchallenged, and he's almost given the finger to Viserys. So Rhaenyra's not happy with that, and she is pretty much old school Targaryen. Very, very similar in traits to Daenerys. Very, very determined, all about the people, doing the right thing and living the Targaryen name. Viserys kind of wants a quiet life now. He's lost his wife, which happened in the first episode, and he's not really over that yet. It's been 6 months now since the first episode. He's not happy. He hasn't moved on. He's still grieving, and there's people around him basically giving him little nudges and saying, you should be doing this. You should be remarried by now. You should be thinking about your lineage. What about Daemon? He's gone in there unchecked. He's disrespecting you. And Viserys isn't really having it. He doesn't want to have that sort of life. He's still in that grieving cycle and he wants to be left alone, but it's not happening. So Rhaenyra's still very determined. We also get this Littlefinger type character who is, funny enough, the Hand of the King. And he's sort of whispering and trying to make decisions for Rhaenyra, saying, you know, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. There's a scene where she's comically stood on a footstool, overlooking a balcony, trying to decide who the next King's Guard is, and she goes with the guy that has, the only guy that has battle experience. So it's a sound pick, and the Hand of the King says, you know, it's not always about that, and this episode is really about Rhaenyra coming out of her shell, coming into her own, and not needing the advice that she's getting, basically. She's sound enough in her own mind, she knows what she wants, she knows how to get it, but there's still people sort of belittling her and saying, you know, you're still a child, you still don't know what you need or what you want, you still need help, you still need us to guide you. And it's really funny, and it's quite good writing in this scene as well, because she is literally stood on a footstool overlooking the balcony, and you get a little panning shot of her feet like she's tiptoeing, so it just gives the impression that she's still not mature enough yet to make her own decisions, and her status in power isn't there yet, if that makes sense, hence the footstool, hence why the Hand is stood by the side. You should say this, you should thank him for his service to the realm and all that kind of stuff, which she does. So that's a little nod, and there's a little seed there of potentially a little to do, which grows later in the episode, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the Hand of the King is very, very sneaky. I called it from the off in the episode that he's up to something. As we know with Game of Thrones, there's always people looking to have their fingers in the pies, and it's not always the people that are sat on the throne that have the true power. I think Viserys says it, but also in Game of Thrones, Littlefinger says it, Cersei says it, Tywin says it, and they all basically say, just because you're sat on the throne, do you think you're the true one in power? Which goes back to when Joffrey's on the phone. Tywin helps save King's Landing at the Battle of Blackwater against Stannis, and Tywin sort of rides in on the horse. The horse just shits all in the throne room. If that was anyone else, Joffrey would have had his balls cut off, tongue cut out, head on a spike on the top of the castle. But because it's his grandfather, he gets away with it. And that's just a sign of true power. And they kind of talk about that a lot in Game of Thrones, that just because you're the king doesn't really mean that you're the one in power. Same as when Joffrey's on there, Cersei's pulling the strings a little bit, but it's more Tywin. He sort of gives a bit of back chat to Cersei, but Tywin's the one that's pulling the strings and the true king behind the curtain, if you like. It's the same thing that's happening here. Viserys is sort of lost in his way because he's still grieving. He's still worried about what he should and shouldn't do, what's best for his family, what's best for his lineage. And you've got that Littlefinger character that's really sort of pulling his strings, whispering in his ear, saying, this is what you should do, this is what's right for the realm. And there's always a little seed, a little nugget of jealousy. There's always a little nugget of determination on a selfish motive as well because of it. And we find out later that comes true. It comes full circle. We also see Alicent walking around a lot, which is the blue dress girl, I call her. She's, in the first episode, she was fairly quiet. She came across fairly stupid, fairly sort of simple. Didn't really know much about anything. But it turns out that she is obviously the daughter of the Hand of the King. And through these whole 2 episodes, she's been working her magic. She's been going between Rhaenyra, talking to her about her family, talking to her about her mother, what made her a proud queen and what made her so likable. And in between that, she's also going to her father, Viserys, and she's spending a lot of time with him, asking him about battle tactics, about how he rallies the people, all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff. And I called it from the off. I looked at it and I thought, she's going to worm her way in. She's going to try and marry this guy. She's going to try and replace the queen. And that would give the Hand of the King an official seat in the power of the throne room. Because if his daughter bears a son, he can claim the throne ahead of Rhaenyra, by tradition anyway. I know the King Viserys has already said, you're my only heir. It'll only be about you. But as we know in the lineage of Game of Thrones, in the old sense, only a son can sit on the throne. Only a trueborn son of the heir can sit on the throne. So I think what's going to happen is, the plan is they're going to wed Alicent to the King Viserys. Alicent's going to bear a son. Then there's going to be a bit of a to-do. The Hand of the King is clearly going to keep putting seeds in Alicent's head, saying this is what you should do. This is what we need to do to get into power. And he already does that in this episode. Towards sort of the midpoint of the episode, you see him in sort of one of the tower rooms speaking to her. She's very sort of reserved, very much a puppet on a string. And he's saying, you need to go and spend some time with the king tonight. Talk to him about what he's thinking and what his plans are for Daemon. And she says, if you think I should. And he's like, yeah, you should. So it's clear that her motive is, she's absolutely an empty vessel. She is following exactly what her father tells her to do. And she's literally a spy, pretty much, for the Hand of the King. She's spending a lot of time with the princess and a lot of time with the king. And she's relaying information to both, whilst also, the key point, relaying information back to the Hand of the King, her father. As we go through the episode, we also discover that Alicent knows a lot, and I would say too much, about both sides of the family. And it's just very clear that this is going to build up to her either becoming a person of power, or she's going to become a person of power for the sake of someone else, i.e. her father. So that very much comes to light in this episode. One little thing I just want to sprinkle in that I really, really liked is the opening scene. So in the opening Game of Thrones scenes, we got the the whole theme tune music, and then we get an overview of the kingdoms of Westeros. We see the North, we see King's Landing, we see Dorne, and it goes through all the models and sort of like builds up from the ground in sort of like a weird mechanical type introduction. We get that with this one as well, but it's all on Dragonstone, Old Valyria, and what we really see is blood spreading from each city, which kind of foreshadows what's going to happen in future episodes. So I thought that was a nice touch. It's also the nature of, obviously, Fire and Blood, which is the sigil for House Targaryen, but also it's the name of the book. So the show is based on the book Fire and Blood, which George R.R. Martin has already created and made, and it's sort of paying homage to that as well, which I thought was a nice little touch. Anyway, going back to the episode itself, so Daemon is all the while now at Dragonstone. He's overtaken the place without challenge. He's taken some of the Kingsguard gold cloaks with him as well. who are obviously seen as traitors to the crown. They have rebelled. There's a bit of a mutiny going on. He's moved into Dragonstone. During the episode, we don't see much of him until the end, but there's rumors that he's forming a unison with another house. He's forming a unison with the enemy, and he's looking to forge an army to overthrow the king and claim his throne, basically. To prevent this and to sort of stop things moving in motion as they are, one of the fellow house members, I think it was House Driftwood or something like that, the Lord basically suggests that the king marries his daughter. It would bring two of the old Valyrian families together and mean that Daemon has no claim to the throne once she bears a son. So, few issues with this. So the very first issue is the girl is about 8 years old, no word of a lie. It's pretty disturbing. And the dad's advice to her basically is that she will say all the right things, she will do all the right things, which she says as he's walking along in the gardens with her. Viserys, is walking along in the gardens with her. And he says, that's what your dad said. What did your mum say? And she says that I won't need to bed you until I'm 14. And it's just twisted. It's like, I know it's old school. I know it's like medieval. Stuff like that happened back in the day. And it's almost paying homage to old lineages and laws. But it's just sick and twisted. It's just this little girl. Like, she doesn't even know really what the hell the world's about yet. And she's already thinking about bearing someone a son and stuff. And she's not even of age. It's weird. But anyway, that's what they proposed to him. Obviously, that gives them a foothold into the kingdom as well. It gives them a foothold into the royal family. Because at this point, he is just the guy is just classed as a lord. But he's sort of a king of his own area, if you like. Kind of how Jon Snow was king in the north. But there's only one true king in the south in King's Landing, or queen. And kind of works like that. So there's already a break in households. There's already kings and queens dotted around everywhere. But the one true king is Viserys, who is on the Iron Throne at the moment, which is how it is in Game of Thrones as well. So to bring these two old Valyrian houses together, this lord suggests wedding the daughter. Viserys is clearly not on board with it. He's very much a man of logic. He just sort of looks at the girl and thinks, she's young enough to be my daughter. She's younger than my daughter. She's not even 14 yet. I've got no connection with this girl whatsoever. He's also still in the grieving cycle. He cannot get over the death of his wife yet. It's still very early days. It's only been 6 months since she died in the first episode, so he's not keen on the idea whatsoever. We then go to a very weird and gruesome scene where Viserys is kind of getting his finger or his digit realigned, re-sewed, re-put together, whatever you want to call it, by the use of maggots. Now, Game of Thrones is notorious for gruesome scenes. We had quite a few gruesome scenes in the first episode, i.e. the dick being cut off, the C-section childbirth. There was some flailing in there. There was some gruesome butt sex. But in this one, it is just really the maggot. So that it comes back again in the whole gruesome scenes thing. But in this one, the only real, apart from the crabs, the only real gruesome thing that you see in this scene is the maggots. And they get Viserys to put his hand in a mound of maggots, and basically the maester says, this is going to cure your rotten flesh. Once they eat away the flesh, the fresh skin will be able to grow through. We'll be able to reattach it, which is just sick. But there's your gruesome scene for this episode. Then we move on swiftly to Viserys is talking to, I think it's Alicent, about the dragons. It might be Rhaenyra. I can't remember actually who he's talking to, but he basically talks about Rhaegar, talks about Rhaegar's dragon, and I think it's Alicent. She says, what happened to Rhaegar's dragon? Where did it go? And he sort of says, there's rumours that it went off into the Spice Lands in the south. Now, I don't know if you guys picked up on this, but I instantly thought, could this be the dragon that lays the 3 eggs for Daenerys? So, Rhaegal, Viserion, and Drogon. Those 3 eggs she gets as a wedding present when she's marrying Khal Drogo in the first season. And they're doing their little weird sex orgy fight fest as part of the wedding ceremony. There's a guy that comes up that looks like he's from the Spice Lands, dressed all in sort of robes and stuff, and he hands her a chest of 3 eggs, and then the rest is history. But I'm wondering, is that a nod? Is that an Easter egg to the dragon egg, in that Rhaegar's dragon was the one that laid the eggs that Daenerys ends up with? I thought that was a nice touch, if it is the case. But I just picked up on that and thought, are they talking about Dany's dragons maybe? I don't know. But let me know, guys, what you think. Did you pick up on it as well? Am I completely off? I don't know. But anyway, There's also, we then go forward to a moment where the mother-in-law of the future princess, so I think her name's Lena, who's going to marry Viserys, basically the 10-year-old, 8-year-old, whatever she is. Her mum is talking to Rhaenyra, and they're talking about how the lineage works, how the Targaryen tradition is. And Rhaenyra basically says, my dad's already promised me that I'm going to be queen. I've got nothing to worry about. And the mother-in-law essentially is saying, yeah, that's what you think, but what do you think happens when Viserys has a son? When my daughter bears him a son, they're going to be married. She's going to be the queen. What do you think will happen to your claim then? And it kind of plants a seed of doubt in Rhaenyra's mind. She comes away confident. She comes away strong that she believes her dad over this weird, twisted woman that just wants a seat in power. But she does come away having that look of, actually, she might have a point. So that could be something that happens later on in future episodes. So it's one to watch. We then fast forward to Daemon, and we basically have a small council meeting, and there's a letter that comes through. They talk about the whole crab feeder issue, that he's basically made himself a home on their shores. He's going in, he's brutalizing people, he is stopping the trade and the supplies, more importantly, coming in through the ship lines into the ports, and he's just basically destroying all the crew and crew members when they come in. He's taking all the resources, so he's becoming a bit of a problem, a bit of a pest. So the small council meeting is to talk about that, but also the topic of Daemon is brought up, and there's a scroll that's shared amongst the Kingsmen, and they're sort of saying, this scroll is an invite to Viserys's invite from Daemon to Viserys to Daemon's wedding. He's basically saying that the woman that he took with him to Dragonstone, he's now marrying. She's also pregnant. He also took one of the dragon eggs from the storage keep in King's Landing. So he's committed multiple crimes, and he's admitting it, apparently. He's saying, he's gone against the crown for one. He's taken over Dragonstone under no order of the king. So he's sort of, committing treason. But he's also trying to flex his position a little bit by saying, look, I've just took one of your precious eggs out of your armory. What are you going to do about it? And I'm taking what I'm owed, basically. So it makes it look like he's becoming a bit of a problem. So there's a bit of a back and forth about what to do with him. There's a couple of different opinions being thrown over the table. Rhaenyra sort of walks in, tries to put her stamp on it and says, why don't we go and speak to him? Let's go over there on Dragonback and say, you're a Targaryen, we're Targaryens, we shouldn't be fighting, this is what we should be doing, it's the same, we've got the same goals, and trying to bring an agreement to a disagreement, basically. They don't want to listen to her. They just say, no, we're going to send a detachment force, we're going to take back Dragonstone. And then you're sort of left thinking, here we go, this is going to end badly. So this is the point where I said earlier, where we get that scene where the Hand of the King is in one of the tower rooms with Alicent, and he's basically telling her to go and spy on the king. Not explicitly, but he's given us the impression that he is strongly using her to sort of go and gain tactical information, go and gain things that he wouldn't see because he's not that close to the king. He is the Hand of the King, but not on a personal level, whereas Alicent has been spending days with him, talking to him about Dragonstone, talking to him about the lineage of his house, talking to him about what his battle tactics are, how he got on the throne, what he does to stay in power, who his friends are. She's basically unweaving the strength of Viserys piece by piece, and those strings of information are being fed directly back to the Hand of the King. So there's definitely a bit of an overthrow going to happen here, similar to how Littlefinger dubbed Ned Stark right in it and got him killed. This is exactly the same thing. It's happening here again. So yeah, he goes to Alicent and he says, go and use your words, go and find out more. A guard sort of walks in behind them, and then he sort of changes his tune, saying, yeah, definitely, you should go and spend time with the king, and he's looking after, he's grieving, all that kind of stuff. So if the guard was to go back and say anything to the king, it makes it look like he's got his back, which is fairly sneaky. So we then cut to Dragonstone, where the detachment force approaches Daemon. There's this really cool scene where they're sort of walking up the path towards the keep. Everything's really foggy, and it kind of reminds me of that time when you see Sir Davos and Jon Snow walking up to Dragonstone, Tyrion as well, And you get that very first scene where Drogon sort of swoops just shy of their head, and they absolutely shit their pants. It sort of reminisces that scene a little bit, where it's sort of eerie. They don't really know what they're going to come across when they get there. And then Daemon comes out. He comes out with his little crew of gold cloaks. He got his side piece there, his wife, whatever he wants to call her. And he's also tossing the dragon egg up and down, just sort of saying, you know, this is mine sort of thing. What are you going to do? Just having a bit of a good time playing around with people. It very quickly gets out of hand. Swords are drawn. They're pointing the swords at each other. The king, the hand of the king, Sir Otto, I think his name was, or Otte, something like that. And he's basically saying to Daemon, you've disgraced the name, take your whore away. Just going in on him, basically, not having any shit. But it's very clear that if you're going to try and handle someone like Daemon, that is not the way to do it. But anyway, he goes in and does exactly what he wants. He says, you've disgraced the crown. The king says you're nothing to him. The king said nothing of the sort. But the hand of the king kind of goes in with that abrupt selfishness, that pride. And as I said, it ties into the whole episode really about him wanting to gain a seat in the throne room. And it's kind of getting to his head now. He's kind of going off on his own. He's disobeying orders slightly, twisting them a little bit. So it's kind of, again, paying to that Peter Baelish character. And he sort of says to Daemon, hand over the egg. This is it. We're taking back Dragonstone. Get out. All that kind of stuff. Then we get Daemon's dragon come down, who's kind of like a sandworm type dragon, giving his weird sort of howling because Daemon sort of holds out the egg and says, if you want it, come and take it. Just as the hand of the king's about to take it, the dragon comes in and sort of says, nah, not having it. You're not handling us like that, sort of thing. Just as it's about to kick off, Rhaenyra comes in from the clouds, swoops over everybody, lands down behind the hand of the king, gets off her dragon, and sort of goes right in the middle of the two of them and says, look, this is not the way to do it. She tells the hand of the king to do one and says that she's going to handle it like a boss. Goes right up to Daemon and says, look, if you are saying all the things that you're saying, I'm the problem. I'm the only reason you're not the heir to this throne. You can end this right now by killing me. And Daemon sort of looks at her as if to say, oh, where does this fire come from? And does nothing. Just says, I just want to have what I'm owed. I want to have my seat in the throne. I want to be the heir. I've done so much for your dad. I've basically claimed kingdoms. I've fought battles for him. I've lost men over it. I'm a true Targaryen. I live by the blood of the traditions and stuff like that. And while she absolutely agrees with him, she kind of says, it is what it is. You need to stop sulking. You need to stop doing this, that, and the other. And kind of comes in as the adult in the situation. How it ends, really, is they have sort of like an Old West stare down. Daemon hands the egg back to her and just says whatever and walks back into the keep. Rhaenyra then gets on the dragon, flies off. She goes back to her dad, and word gets back to Viserys that Rhaenyra was at Dragonstone. So she disobeyed him. He said, don't go there. You're going to be in danger. But actually, she goes in, cool as a cucumber. He starts saying, you disobeyed me. Why did you do that? You could have been killed. And she sort of says, yeah, but I didn't. I got the egg back. I went in and I did blah, blah, blah. Said this and done that. And he kind of sort of laughs and says, you know, you're just like your mum. You didn't listen to me, but actually you were the person that fixed the whole situation. So more and more by each episode, he's beginning to see that the old ways don't work, where they keep saying that a woman doesn't have a right to the throne. They didn't know what they're talking about. We need someone with power, intelligence, strength, and that can only come from a man. He's starting to see very, very slowly over the course of the 2 episodes that actually that is absolute bullshit. She is just as strong, if not stronger, than any male heir. She knows what she's talking about. She managed to go to Dragonstone, one, get the egg back from Daemon, but also be firm but fair and say, you know, we are who we are, but we're also family. You shouldn't be rebelling against us. If you're saying you're a true Targaryen and you're true to the traditional ways, why have you gone and hidden in a keep somewhere with some of the King's Guard? That's basically what she points out to him. And Viserys sort of looks at her quite proudly and sort of knows that what she's done has made a massive impact, and there's no bloodshed. They came away with the egg, what they wanted. Daemon got a kick up the ass. He ran into Dragonstone with his tail between his legs, which is a great result in the King's eyes, so he was very proud. Then we go back to Daemon's side of it, and sneaky, all the stuff that was put on the scroll is a lie. So he's not marrying this girl. She's not pregnant. And the girl sort of gives her opinion in saying, you know, I came to you because I wanted to get away from fear. You said that I was going to be safe, and he said, you are safe. And they sort of have a little bit of a to-do. But it kind of comes out that Daemon is willing to say and do absolutely anything to secure his claim and his rightful place on the throne. So that includes lying about the girl he's with being pregnant, about the wedding, everything else. And it's basically used to buy time to what I think is to create an army. So that's left at that. Moving on swiftly, we go to a very tense scene in the throne room where the king has decided finally that he's going to put himself over for marriage. So bearing in mind this is only 6 months on from episode 1, it's still very raw, and he kind of has a chat with Rhaenyra, quite a touching chat with her, and says, you know, I haven't forgotten your mother. This place will never be the same, even sort of 60 years on when I'm no longer here. The warmth that she brought to this place will never be replaced. And Rhaenyra's really touched by that. She sort of says, you know, that's exactly what I wanted you to say, but you've got my blessing basically to move on, to remarry, because I know that's your duty as a king. So he gets her blessing to do that. So then we go into another scene where he calls a council meeting. Rhaenyra's in there, the Hand of the King's in there, Master of Ships. And the Master of Ships is the king of the other area. So the guy that he tries to farm off his 8-year-old to, Laena, he tries to farm her off. But the Master of Ships apparently is the richest guy in the kingdom. He is the one that's supplying the force, the power, the supplies, everything to Viserys. So people are kind of saying, you should marry his daughter, you know, it will bring 2 old houses together. The Maester even says it will be good for the kingdom, it will be good for the realm. It will show status, it will show power in the midst of the death of the queen. But also it will secure sort of money, it will secure just general security, and it will mean that those houses are brought together, which means we get a bigger army. There's nothing but pros to this deal, basically, is what he tries to say. And in a shock twist of events, just as we think the king is about to say, yes, Laena, I will take your hand in marriage, you poor 8-year-old, he sort of glances around the room. He says, I've made a decision, I am going to remarry. He looks at Rhaenyra, and Rhaenyra sort of gives a nod as if to say, yeah, go on, Dad, you do it. You've got my blessing. She's a good little girl. She'll do what she's told. And then he looks at Alicent, who is the daughter of the Hand of the King, if you've been listening. And he sort of says, yeah, Alicent, I'm going to marry Alicent. And then all of a sudden, Rhaenyra's like, what? Since when? According to Rhaenyra, Alicent is her friend. She's someone she's confided in since the very beginning of the first episode. Told her a lot of personal emotions, personal struggles. So I would imagine Rhaenyra feels very betrayed at this point. She actually storms out. And Viserys can't work out why, because he thinks they were on good terms, but he hasn't seen the intricate conversations and moments they've been spending together. So he's quite pissed off. He's like, what? You know, you said you were giving me the blessing. Rhaenyra walks out absolutely cheesed that her friend is now marrying her dad, and she sort of looks at her as if to say, did you actually speak to me because you cared about me, or did you try and get your seat in on the throne? And that's kind of how she feels that she's treated her. So she storms out. Alicent kind of looks a little bit out of place, but she's got what she wanted as well. Whilst she was under the orders of the Hand of the King, she, I feel, has grown an attachment to the king as well. She relies on him as a father figure more than anything, because the Hand of the King is all about power, he's all about strategy, and he hasn't got time to love people. And Alicent is actually looking for that love, that comfort, that security, which she gets from the king, which is kind of sad. So she does kind of grow attached to him as well at the same time, through sort of false pretenses and orders from her dad. So this causes the Master of Ships to be absolutely pissed off. He obviously thought that his daughter was going to be the one. He feels disgraced, he feels disrespected. He even says, this is an outrage, what do you think you're doing? And Viserys very quickly stomps him down and says, I'm the king, I can do what I want. And then there's a little bit of tension between them, and it kind of ends. We then finish with a scene where the Master of Ships is talking to Daemon, and they're forming a little pact. You can see what's happening. The Master of Ships is saying, you know, we're true heirs, we're true blood, we come from a hard-working background, we've literally fought and killed for everything that we've got, but yet we're not in a seat of power. Why is that? And Daemon sort of says, you know, don't talk about my brother, only I can talk about him like that. And he kind of shows a little bit of glimmer of light in there, kind of like Anakin's character does, even when he's completely dark and he's completely against the norm and goes against the rules. There's still that spark of character and emotion in his deepest roots of his heart there. So he kind of says, don't talk about my brother like that, only I can slag him off, basically. And it's kind of a nice touch. And there's a little glimpse of what I would imagine is going to be Daemon's redemption arc later on, after he goes a bit AWOL and starts slaughtering people Order 66 style. But we get a little scene where the Master of Ships is kind of saying, you know, we're owed all this, why are we left in the lurch? Kind of just puts that seed in Daemon's head of, we're being treated like shit here, we're being disrespected, we need to do what we need to do. And Daemon sort of says what you suggesting, and the guy says, you know, we've got the crab feeder who is causing issues on our shores. He's made himself a little home, he's stopping all my supplies, he's stopping all my soldiers, my equipment and stuff coming in, we need to do something about it. And Daemon sort of obviously points out that it's against anything the king would want, against the king's orders. We haven't got clearance to do it. And the guy kind of says, do we need it? Do we need this clearance? You know, we are the ones that are holding the cards. I've got the money. I've got the supplies. You've got the battle tactics. You've got some of the king's guard. You've got dragons. We can do what we want, basically. And Daemon sort of looks in the fire as if to say, yeah, it's dark side. And sort of gets that thought growing. You could see a thought in his mind. He's like, do you know what, this guy is right. I don't need anyone's permission. And I think this is the beginning of the end for Daemon's staying true to the lineage type of character. And then the episode ends. So all in all, another very strong foreshadowing episode. I think it's picking up a little bit of steam, but I wouldn't say it was as strong as the first episode. There were elements of it that I did like. First of all, we get to see more dragons again. There was a little bit of a dragon stare down. There is strong hints of rebellion coming from all sides. You've got Alicent now, who's going to be married to Viserys, and he's literally marrying the hand of the king pretty much, because that's his daughter. He's going to be pulling the strings, so there's going to be something going on there. We're going to be worried about assassination attempts. Is it going to be the case of once she bears the son, are they going to try and kill Viserys, because then she will become queen? And the hand of the king will essentially be king or king regent or whatever you call it. And then it'll just be until the son comes of age, and then the son will be king. So that's an option. Daemon's lurking in the shadows. He's now been given a strong nod from the Lord of Driftwood that they don't need anybody. They don't need the king. They don't need anyone's permission. They can do what the hell they want. And he's kind of sat there going, you know, you've got a point. So he's swaying off into the dark side as well. And we've also got Rhaenyra's battle with Alicent. She thought she was being open, she was being honest, and I could see Rhaenyra now going a little bit dark as well, because again, she's been betrayed, again, she's been let down. And it's not on a sort of family basis this time either. It's someone that she really confided in. It's someone that she thought she was good friends with, so I'd imagine there's going to be a little bit of a to do with those two as well, because she had absolutely no idea that Alicent was spending time with her dad and saying and doing the same things as she was with her. So she kind of feels a little bit betrayed emotionally, and I completely get it. But this episode was very much setting up plot points. It was about putting in the dice roll that's going to start people's sort of character arcs, and it's going to start big plot lines, I would imagine, from episode 3. So all in all, not too much action in this one, nothing too gruesome. There's also the crab feeder, who's a character that's going to be quite prominent in the following episodes. We get a quick glimpse of what the crab feeder looks like. He's kind of half fish, half man, some face missing, spent a lot of time in the sea, very dehydrated, but it's going to be an interesting concept. So it's going to be interesting to see what that character plays. Is kind of replacing the Night King a little bit, in that we've got these warring factions, these warring households, but in the background there's a looming threat that kind of goes overlooked until it's too late. And then people realise that, oh shit, we need to unite and try and take out this problem. So Daemon and the Lord of Driftwood have already sort of clocked it and said, yeah, let's take him out. But I think their intentions are not the same. So it'd be interesting to see how that pans out in the next episode. I hope the crab feeder goes on and becomes a bigger threat, because it will kind of tie into the Mad King and also the Night King and the White Walkers in Game of Thrones, in terms of sort of how they start out. And then all the warring houses and factions are too busy arguing over the throne, arguing over power, to notice that over the months and years, this little one-man thing has become a huge threat against the world, and then it might be something that they do later on in this series. But to be honest, I think the Night King's great, but someone called the Crab Feeder isn't going to land very well, and it's not going to land on a threat level, even if you had a massive army of crabs and sea snakes and all that kind of thing, which I don't think is going to happen. But it'd be just interesting to see how that character pans out for it as well. But that is the episode in a nutshell, guys. If I was to give it a rating, it's probably a solid 7. As I said, I don't think it was as strong as the first. I think there was stronger character presence in the first episode, some better scenes, some more gruesome scenes. It felt like very much the original season 1 and 2 of Game of Thrones in that it was hard hitting. There was some great dialogue in there, some good character introductions, whereas this one, I feel it's more of a building stone on the first episode. Some great scenes, some great dialogue, some funny interactions, some little bit of, oh, I can see what's going on here. But again, it's story building and plot building. And I think if they've done that in the right way, and it builds into something substantial in episode 3, 4, and obviously moving on into the second season, which has already been confirmed, I can see it paying off massively. And as we know from Game of Thrones, it was very slow building in the first sort of 1 to 3 episodes, and when it got to episode 4 onwards, it went a bit crazy, and then it didn't stop after that point. It was just continuous drama and craziness, which I think is going to be happening here. The blessing as well is that we've got the material, we've got the book, it's already been written, and I think we're going to be sound. I think we're in good hands. But for me, this one is a 7 out of 10, and I'm looking forward to episode 3. Let me know in the comments, guys, if you've seen it. What do you think of episode 2? What are you looking forward to in episode 3? And have you spotted anything that I have missed? Is there anything gleaming that we need to talk about? Let me know in the comments. Also, let me know your thoughts on the episode. Are you enjoying the series so far? Is there anything you feel's missing, or are you on the whole pleased as I am? Please leave a like as well, guys, if you do enjoy it, and I will see you again next week for episode 3. Peace.